everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now, as you probably might know, Lilo and Stitch has got to be one of my favorite animated Disney films from the 2000s, next to Bolt and The Princess and the Frog. And I think the TV show, which ran from September 20th, 2003 to July 29th, 2006, has got to be one of my favorite animated Disney Channel shows. Also, I thought the crossover episodes where Lilo and Stitch meet several characters from Kim Possible, The Proud Family, American Dragon Jake Long, and Recess were pretty interesting. Anyway, for this episode, we're going to look at the final movie in the Lilo and Stitch franchise and see if it holds up today. So, released to television on June 23rd and to DVD on June 27th, 2006, the movie is Leroy and Stitch. Now, on for the plot of the special. After finally capturing all of Jumba's genetic experiments and finding the one true place where each of them belongs, Stitch, Jumba, and Pleakley are offered positions in the Galactic Alliance, but they turn them down so that they can stay on Earth with Lilo. However, Lilo realizes that her alien friends have places where they belong, and it's finally time to say aloha. Meanwhile, Dr. Jacques von Hamsterviel breaks out of jail with help from Captain Gantu and immediately begins work on a devious new creation, Leroy, who looks just like kindly alien Stitch and is sent to Earth to tear apart everything in his path. To defeat the evil rodent-like scientist and his crazed experiment, young Lilo must reunite with Stitch and her other extraterrestrial pals. Unfortunately, the only thing that may be able to stop Leroy is a performance from Elvis himself. So, what are my thoughts on this movie? Well, in my opinion, this was a very emotional, nostalgic, and epic movie. And like Forever Royal and Coronation Day, this has got to be one of my favorite Disney TV finales ever. But now, let's move over to Mustang notes. According to writer-producer Jess Winfield on his TV.com forum thread, Leroy and Stitch was made during the production of the second and final seasons of Lilo and Stitch the series, with production finished in 2005, and it was originally set for a direct-to-video release in the Northern Hemisphere during the spring of 2006. The animation production was outsourced to Wang Film Productions, a Taiwanese studio that previously worked on some animation for Lilo and Stitch the series. The movie marks the third film in the Lilo and Stitch franchise without any involvement from creators Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, as they would leave Disney for DreamWorks Animation to write and direct How to Train Your Dragon. Also to note, this movie was the last Western animated production in the franchise to date, and it was nominated for the 2007 Golden Reel Award by the Motion Picture Sound Editors, which ultimately went to Disney Toon Studios' The Fox and the Hound 2, which I still consider as one of the worst direct-to-video Disney films ever made, next to Belle's Magical World. Now, what are my thoughts on the animation? Well, in my opinion, this style of hand-drawn animation is pretty good, and I'm glad that it's still in the same style as Stitch the movie and the TV series. Plus, I like that the movie partly takes place in Kokawa Town on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. And like I said before, the last time I've ever been to Hawaii was way back during the summer of 2008, when me and the Boy Scouts of Troop 604 camped at Camp Pupukea on Oahu for one whole week. Also to note, Oahu is the place where my #1 fan Nathan Higa lives. Some of my favorite scenes in this movie include the part where Lilo goes around the island, seeing how the other experiments are doing. I like that the film features a cameo from Victoria a couple times. I like the final battle at Aloha Stadium, and I like the scene at the end where Lilo, Stitch, Nani, David, Jumba, Pleakley, Myrtle, and the other experiments have a group photo together. Plus, I also like the scenes in space, like the scene at the beginning where the Galactic Federation congratulate Lilo and Stitch's success in redeeming all the experiments, the scenes on Planet Turo, and the scene in Jumba's old lab at Galaxy Defense Industries. Another thing that I liked in this movie was the soundtrack, which includes not only the TV show's theme song, Aloha I Como Mai, performed by Jump 5, but it also includes songs by the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley. For example, there's I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, which I think is the most emotional song the king has ever sang. There's also Jailhouse Rock, which is played while Hamsterviel and the Leroy clones are in jail and during the end credits, along with Don't Be Cruel, performed by Everlife. Speaking of which, I like that the end credits show a full list of Jumba's experiments from Shrink to Stitch, which scrolls along the left side of the screen. However, in my opinion, the best song in the whole movie is Aloha Oi, which is sung twice. One time on Jumba's record player, and the second time performed in rock and roll style by Lilo, Stitch, Reuben, and the experiments in order to shut down Leroy and the clone army. And now, let's move on to the characters and the voice actors. Let's start with Lilo Pelikai, voiced by Devay Chase, whom was in Donnie Darko, The Ring, R.L. Stein's Haunted Lighthouse, and Hayao Miyazaki's Oscar-winning champion, Spirited Away. Like in the TV show and the past few movies, Lilo is a spirited, kind, and generous little girl, and I like that she believes in the good of everybody, as shown through her interactions with Gantu and the experiments, especially Stitch. Plus, I think her autism, like a few other Disney characters, makes her very relatable, and believe me, if it wasn't for Isaac the Media Hunter, who reviewed the first movie months ago, I wouldn't have realized that Lilo was autistic in the first place. Anyway, during this movie, after capturing and redeeming all the experiments, Lilo has been made Galactic Federation's ambassador to Earth and the sole guardian of Stitch's cousins, which in my opinion seems like a pretty big responsibility for a 10-year-old little girl. Plus, I felt very emotional when she decides to let Stitch, Jumba, and Pleakley leave Earth to fulfill their dreams. Plus, I liked when Lilo gives her friends special keepsakes before they part ways, and the scene where Lilo takes Nani's advice to use an intergalactic video phone, which the only one on Earth is located on Gantu's ship in order to contact Stitch. Speaking of which, I thought Lilo was pretty smart to realize that the Stitch she was contacting wasn't Stitch, making her sense that Stitch is in trouble. And I thought Lilo was very brave to go to Planet Turo with Reuben's help. Next is Lilo's closest friend and partner, Experiment 626, aka Stitch, voiced by Chris Sanders, who did the vocals for Mulan's dog, Little Brother. He directed How to Train Your Dragon, The Croods, and the 2020 Call the Wild movie. In this film, Stitch has been offered the chance to become the new captain of the Galactic Armada and its new flagship, the BRB, which is short for the Big Red Battleship 9000. Before he leaves Earth with Jumba and Pleakley, Lilo gives Stitch a necklace with a tiki of the god Kutiki in order to give him strength, which I thought was a very touching moment. When Gantu breaks Dr. Hamsterviel out of prison, Stitch is sent on his first mission as captain to capture the evil rodent once more. In my opinion, Stitch is still a lovable alien, and I think his bond with Lilo is really strong. Also, I liked the part where Stitch nibbles into a rock that Lilo gave Pleakley in order to give it less weight, and when he throws it at a black hole. Plus, I think Stitch is an awesome singer during the final climax. Next we come to Stitch's creator, Dr. Jumba Jookiba, voiced by the late David Ogden Stiers, whom was in Beauty and the Beast, the Pocahontas films, Iron Will, and Hoodwinked. In this film, Jumba was given the opportunity to return to his old laboratory, and before he leaves Earth, Lilo gives him an Elvis record to remember her by. However, not long after returning to Galaxy Defense Industries, Hamsterviel holds Jumba hostage in his own lab and forces him to create a new illegal genetic experiment named Leroy. By the way, I thought it was very smart of Jumba to use the Elvis record to program a shutoff switch for Leroy. Next is Jumba's assistant and roommate, Wendell Pleakley, voiced by Kevin McDonald, whom was Mr. Medulla in Disney's Sky High. During this film, Pleakley is granted a position at Galactic Alliance Community College as head of Earth Studies. He gets an assistant, a new wardrobe, and the keys to the college's carpool van. But it's revealed that he's only a supervising professor, and he becomes very dissatisfied with not being able to spread his knowledge of Earth. And he starts to miss Jumba and the rest of Lilo's family. Also, I like that Lilo gives Pleakley a rock as a keepsake, which did come in handy when he, Jumba, and Stitch were heading towards a black hole. Moving on, we also have the Grand Councilwoman, voiced by Zoe Caldwell. Now, while she doesn't have a big role in this movie, I like that she honors Lilo and Stitch's success at redeeming all of Jumba's experiments and finding them a home on Earth. However, after Hamsterviel takes over planet Turo, the Grand Councilwoman sadly gets demoted to secretary. But thankfully, when Hamsterviel is defeated and rearrested, she resumes her rightful position at the end. Next on our list is Gantu, voiced by veteran voice actor Kevin Michael Richardson. Over the course of the show, Gantu has been trying various schemes and natural forces to capture all the experiments with little success. And during this movie, Gantu attempts to redeem himself by breaking Dr. Hamsterviel out of prison. After Hamsterviel conquers planet Turo and Leroy captures all of Stitch's cousins, Gantu is fired due to him no longer being needed by the evil rodent. As a result of this betrayal, Gantu decides to turn over a new leaf by freeing a captive Lilo and Reuben. After defeating Hamsterviel and saving the galaxy, Gantu is granted his position as captain of the Galactic Armada once again. Next we come to his henchman, Experiment 625, aka Reuben, voiced by Rob Paulson, who also voices 6 of Stitch's other experiments. Like I said before, Reuben possesses all of Stitch's functions and is equipped with advanced lingual skills. Unfortunately, his main flaw is laziness, but his talent for making delicious sandwiches makes up for it. Fun fact, Reuben is named after the classic sandwich of the same name, which consists of corned beef, Swiss cheese, sauerkraut, and the Russian dressing grilled between slices of rye bread. Or as Reuben himself puts it, the classic corned beef and sauerkraut on rye. You know, in my eyes, after Lilo befriends and names him, I think Reuben is a great supporting character, like when he repairs Gantu's communication system and the rest of his ship, and when he convinces Gantu to switch sides after he was fired. Also to note, I think Reuben makes a great saxophone player during the final climax, and I like that he becomes Gantu's galley officer at the end of the movie. Next on our list is Myrtle Edmonds, voiced by Liliana Mimi, whom was in the Santa Claus sequels, the Cheaper by the Dozen films, the Air Buddies films, along with a few episodes of Sophia the First and Roxy in the Nickelodeon dub of Winx Club. When it comes right down to it, Myrtle is still a dislikable brat who always thinks of Lilo or her friends as weirdos, even though she keeps Experiment 007, aka Gigi, as a pet. However, I like that at the end of the movie, she decides to join the family group photo because Gigi insisted, which shows that Myrtle has gotten over her hatred of Lilo. Next we come to the main villain, Dr. Jacques von Hamsterviel, voiced by Jeff Bennett, who also voices 13 of Stitch's cousins. To me, while he is a short, chubby, rodent-like alien, Hamsterviel is still diabolical, power-hungry, but also pretty silly at times. Also, I think these 3 newspaper articles do give him some slight character development. During this movie, after escaping from prison, Hamsterviel forces Jumba to create a new experiment, which he names Leroy. He then repeatedly clones Leroy and uses said clones to take over the Galactic Alliance. And after Leroy captures all the experiments, Hamsterviel fires Gantu for his incompetence. Thankfully, after the Leroy army is defeated, the remaining experiments toss Hamsterviel around like a beach ball, which I thought was really funny. And he's also sent back to prison afterwards. Another character to talk about is Hamsterviel's latest experiment, Leroy, also voiced by Chris Sanders. Leroy is the last known experiment to be created in the series. He was designed as an improved version of Stitch with extra destructive capabilities and less fluffy. Thus, Hamsterviel could use Leroy to take control of the Galactic Federation. Plus, Leroy is assigned to capture all of the other experiments with help from Lilo's photo album and round them up at the Aloha Stadium. In my opinion, Leroy is cunning, ruthless, sneaky, and a lot more evil than Experiment 627. And he's a nearly unstoppable monster. But thankfully, Jumba programs him with a failsafe that causes him and his clones to shut down whenever they hear the Elvis song Aloha Oi. And finally, the other experiments are voiced by Greta Lyle, Samantha Morton, Jim Cummings, Nancy Cartwright, Frank Welker, Bobcat Goldthwait, Trez McNeil, and my favorite, Tara Strong. And now on to my final words. Overall, Leroy and Stitch is a fantastic movie, and it serves as a strong finale to Lilo and Stitch's TV show. The animation is decent to say the least, but not as good as the first movie or Stitch Has a Glitch. It has scenes that range from emotional and sweet to fun and nostalgic to epic and rockin'. Lilo and Stitch have got to be some of the most beloved and relatable main characters that Disney has ever given us during the 2000s. The supporting characters, Jumba and Pleakley, are great. I like that it features all of the experiments, including a cameo from Victoria, and I like that Gantu and Reuben have become redeemable in this movie. Myrtle is still dislikable, but okay in the end. Hamsterviel is still a power-hungry but silly villain, and Leroy is very menacing. Plus, I like that the movie features songs from the King of Rock and Roll, and it really makes me want to blog the 2022 Elvis movie someday if I can just get a collaborator to help me. Anyway, if you folks want to check this movie out, be sure to give it a watch either on DVD or on Disney+. As for my rating, I'll give it a full 100%. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me for my next blog. But I wonder which one it should be. Computer, any suggestions?
Well, my data has received word that your fans and subscribers
have been asking you to blog Disney's Wish for almost an entire year now, ever since you blogged Strange World last year. Well then, I better get to it right away. Mustang power. I hope.